2.
I think we're good. Okay. Well, now I have to go back to my agenda, but I will call the January meeting of the North Liberty Community Library Board of Trustees to order. And we don't have any public to comment. We can't even approve minutes, right, Jenny?
Right, but hopefully we'll get Mike in here soon and approve them.
All right, well, for now we'll move on. And since we have Erin here, she can do her staff introduction for us.
Wow. Okay. At any minute, I'm sure that my son is going to walk in the door and the dogs are going to freak out. And I apologize, but it is what it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And okay. Now, please tell me, can you see this slide that says book challenges? Don't panic, you've got this. Okay.
Yep, we can see.
Oh, okay. Do we want to back up and do the other stuff while Mike is here?
Jesse, do you want to just go ahead and do the minutes real quick or no?
Sure, we can do that real quick.
I am fine. I have nothing going on tonight, so I'm happy to just wait.
Thanks for being flexible, Erin. Okay, well then we'll go back a step. And did anyone have any changes or concerns about the December minutes? No? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to approve them?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting.
Thank you. And anyone want to second?
I will second.
Thank you, Scott. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, well, we will move to approve the December minutes. And now we can go back to where we were, and Erin will tell us all about her, amazing work she's doing.
Well, real quick, we are, I think I mentioned this in the board report, but we are working towards getting a junior optimist group going at the library. So if you know anyone who is 4th, 5th, or 6th grade that would like to be part of that, we are shooting for a March start time, and we will probably be meeting on Monday or Thursday nights. Not sure. I gotta figure that part out. But right now we're in the marketing and getting the word out phase. So the optimists have always been very good to the library, and they asked if we would like to try this out, and I said absolutely. So that's what we're going to try and do. And otherwise, we're just doing our programming. We have a winter reading challenge going on. If any of you would like to join before the end of the month, which I know is coming up, but we're just asking people to read 500 minutes for like 3 hours. It's not a lot. And then
300 minutes.
300 minutes. Thank you. I did not look at that before I started speaking. So it's not a lot, but anybody who finishes will be entered into a drawing for Iowa Heartlanders hockey tickets. So we're excited about that. Okay, so I am going to talk to you about things that are happening in the world of book challenges, and what we can do, or you can do as a board, to help support us in case this starts to happen in our community. So, okay. So as library board members, trustees, you are defenders of intellectual freedom as defined by the American Library Association. And that is the right of every individual to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. And once a board has established a collection development policy, library resources are purchased, which respond to community needs. Trustee advocates must recognize a sacrosanct responsibility to permit people access to these materials. So one of the most important things that library boards can do is be familiar with this idea of intellectual freedom and what is in our policies for the library. I just took that information directly from the Iowa Library Trustees Handbook, which I've linked so that it's easily accessible. So you should all be kind of familiar with that at this point. And then, you know, what's been happening is people have been coming to mostly school boards and being vocal about certain materials that are in school libraries. It's always in front of the audience, and generally it seems like the poor school board members and or public library board members are not prepared, because that's it's a little upsetting when somebody comes at you and they tend to be pretty aggressive. So one of the most frequent questions asked of trustee advocates, usually in front of an audience, is whether a particular book or other item should be in the library's collection. And the response must be unequivocal in defense of intellectual freedom. And this does not always happen. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what actually intellectual freedom is. So it's protecting and defending all views, and that you are endorsing of those views, regardless of if you yourself personally agree with them. And that is one of the hardest things that I think librarians and board members face, is that, like, I have lots of opinions on lots of things that you may or may not agree with. And you may have lots of opinions on lots of different things that I don't agree with. And that's okay. Like, we need that, but it's the dictating of who can hear those things where things get dicey. So in a very good collection development policy, the idea of intellectual freedom should be endorsed and easy to find. And so when I say good job, we have a very good, sorry for the scrolling, but we have very good, a very good collection development policy. And we reference in there that we, you know, the librarians choose what's in there, what kind of programming we do, and that we follow the library's mission statement, and that we also meet the basic principles of the Library Bill of Rights, and the freedom to read and the freedom to view statements, which are very handily linked here. And, you know, every effort will be made to represent all points of view, and that just because we purchase certain things does not mean we necessarily endorse that. So that's good. Access is also another important thing that I feel like is addressed pretty well here, especially in section B, where it says, you know, children may obtain materials that their parents may consider inappropriate. And, you know, that's not on us to restrict, that is on a parent to have a discussion with their child about. And we really believe in patron privacy. So even if a mom or a grandma were to call and say, hey, I need to know what books my kid has checked out. Hey, they, one moment. Can you stop? Well, it is Monday all over, isn't it? Okay, so just because the parent wants that information, we don't need to give that to them, especially if they're older, if they're like preteen, tween age, teens for sure. That's why we can encourage them to, make sure their kid has their own library card, and it's not our place to tell parents what is checked out on their kid's account. Okay, so I feel like we have a pretty strong policy there.
That actually, just to mention, is protected by Iowa legislation, protects libraries in that way.
Awesome.
It's very weird, and parents sometimes think it's strange, but it is a privacy issue. So we are protected to say, I'm sorry, but we can't provide that information to you.
Yeah. So I kind of compiled a list of people who sometimes want to challenge materials. They always say, well, I don't want to ban a book. I just want to. So you have the concerned parent that likes to say, well, I mean, I am not a censor, and I would hate for that to be, known in the community. I just don't want this book to end up in the wrong hands. The angry citizen who likes to tell us all about where their tax dollars should go, and they don't want their tax dollars to pay my salary or for this filth that's in the library. Often those are people who don't even have library cards. The other censorship, intellectual freedom thing that sometimes arises is actually within the library community. So librarians themselves sometimes resist purchasing items because it doesn't meet with their moral code, or that they know automatically, like, I'm going to buy this book and somebody's going to get mad and they're going to make a fuss, and I can't deal with that. So they just won't purchase something. I didn't censor myself when I worked in Kelowna, but there were times where I would see a book and be like, oh, and then I would kind of second guess myself because I'm like, oh, but then I would get it anyways. But, it does happen just because, we don't want to make people angry, but sometimes it's going to happen. And then my new favorite are the lawmakers who, I'm not telling you to remove a book, but I'm telling you to remove a book or I will get you fired or charge you with felony, which is a thing that is happening in Iowa right now. So parents can freak out. I'm a parent. I freak out about a lot of things with my son. So many things. And that's what parents do. They're there to be bumpers and safety nets and training wheels and all the rest of it. But you know what? I don't freak out on my son's friends about those things. Like, I am not all up in, Bodie's grill because, his socks are mismatched and he didn't take his dishes to the sink or what have you, because they have their own parents to do that and have those conversations with them. I'm not in charge of them. And, I can be a good influence, but I certainly cannot tell them what they can and cannot do, with their time. I'm also a librarian. And because we're in a public library, it is not our duty to act as a parent to any child in the library or teenager for that matter. It's a little bit different in school settings, but we don't act as what in parental locus, whatever the Latin term for that is.
In parentis loco.
Thank you. So while I can understand as a parent why a grandma or an uncle might get mad that their 6-year-old was able to check out an R-rated movie in the library, I can't prevent that child from doing that. This happens all the time. We have kids that check out R-rated movies. We don't know why they're checking them out. We don't know that they'll ever watch them. Their mom could have sent them to the library and told them to get her some movies, and they know she likes horror, and so they just go grab some. They may never watch them, but you know what? I can't say, no, don't check that out, because it's not my responsibility. So again, it's that, like, as a parent, I get that. Like, I would be so angry if my kid came home with a rated R movie at a certain age, but also, like, I'm not going to get mad at the librarian for letting them check that out. But it can be a fine line for some people to, especially the public, to understand that, like, that's, we don't gatekeep like that. You can check out whatever you want, and that's okay. If the parent has a problem with it, the parent needs to have that conversation with the kid.
And it's probably, mostly it's not a 6-year-old, but that's an extreme example, but it has happened or could happen. I'm going to chime in and just say 2 things. One is that often when people are checking out, we aren't even looking at what they're checking out. We're just checking them out and putting them in a bag or handing them back to them. I don't even know sometimes what the titles are that people grab when they come up to the desk. We're busy and we're moving fast. Just like I use the example of the grocery store or another place, a parent doesn't call the grocery store and say, when my kid comes in, don't let them buy any candy bars. They would never think to do that. They would not ask them to gatekeep what their kiddos buy at the grocery store. And it's just a similar thing for us. We expect that a parent will come with their child or have those conversations at home to make sure that their kiddos are picking the books and movies and things within their parameters as parents and family members.
Absolutely. I really like that grocery store analogy. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, can you imagine? Okay, so school people also freak out. And, whoever is on the school board, it is like the most thankless job. And I feel very sorry for them because they are starting to have to deal with all kinds of issues. So, like, my first experience with a book challenge was in 1993/4 when I was in high school. And we had copies of this book called Annie on My Mind in our school library. We actually had 3 copies of them. There was a group, an LGBTQ group, that donated a bunch of books to Kansas City School District, and then like our school district. One of them was All American Boys, and then the other one was Annie on My Mind, which that it's a book about 2 girls that fall in love, and nothing bad happens to them. It's like the first queer book for teens where it wasn't like moralizing about homosexuality being bad. And a lot of books that were written during like the early 80s, it was a lot of like, oh, well, you're gonna, catch something bad and you're gonna die, kind of things that, were not super positive. So it was just like this love story with these 2 girls. Well, people freaked out when this group donated the books, and they actually, in the Kansas City School District, they burned them on the steps of a courthouse. In my school district, our superintendent, Ron Wimmer, he decided that all on his own, he pulled all the books out of all of the libraries, including my high school library, and wrote his own book donations guidelines without consulting the libraries, the librarians, or staff, and overrode the librarians' decisions to keep the books that were donated. It was this whole thing. And ironically, like Annie on My Mind, we had 3 copies of that book on our library shelves for 10 years. He didn't even know. So the student body of my high school, the government decided to sue and take the school district to court. And Stevie Case was our president, and her dad also happened to be one of our staff people, but they took it to court, and the judge was like, you can't just arbitrarily ignore all of your policies and procedures for a book challenge and just yank them out of the library. And there's documented procedures. Nobody had actually gone through the formal process of challenging these books. They just, the superintendent was like, blah, blah. So we won. And then in 1996, the books were reinstated into our library. So I was like, I thought that book challenges were not a thing because, that seems so 1984 kind of thing. But I was like, wow, all right, that really does happen. Elected officials. Okay, so we're going to talk about our governor, Miss Kim. She has gone on record at her State of the State to say that she wants the process for review books to be streamlined with school boards, which, okay, that's fine. But she wants the appeals process to go to the State Board of Education, which that's not how that works. That it should stay within the community where it's being challenged unless it's taken to the next level. And there was a one-on-one interview with her where they asked why can't the book just sit on the shelf and be checked out by kids and families who want to read it? And she said, well, that's not appropriate because, we can't have these books just laying around for any child to discover. And then she went on to use the R-rated movie system ratings and said that, I don't know, this quote that I have listed, it doesn't really make much sense, but I think she was trying to say that no, you can't have these books on the shelf. But then she kind of contradicts herself and then says, as a parent, it's for you to decide what's important for your child to know and talk about them. The book that she was, then she goes on to read a passage from a particular book, and it's taken completely out of context. And I'll tell you, it's this book right here. It's called All Boys Are Blue. And what nobody that is doing these book challenges, they never want things to be in context. There's a really beautifully written author's note that talks about how he wrote this book because it was his experience, and it's not fair to keep these heavy topics from teens because they need to see themselves in their libraries. And it was, it's his story. And he says in there that this book touches on sexual assault, losing your virginity, homophobia, racism, and anti-Blackness. He kind of outlines everything that's going to possibly be a trigger for people. And, I think that's authors know what they're doing. And, as a library, it's the windows, mirrors, and sliding doors analogy that Rudine Bishop coined back in the 80s. And it's you want your library books you want to be able to see yourself in a story. You also want to be able to see other people in a story that you may not have experience with. And you also want to be able to kind of, go through the story and really feel part of it. And so, one of the things that we try to do is make sure we have all those types of books available for everybody. Senator Jake Chapman, he is he's the Senate leader, I think. So sorry, we're just going to click on his, if you really want to know more about him. He's quite a guy. He went to Urbandale to protest some books. Super happy with Governor Reynolds' conversation about this book. You can watch that if you would like, and you can read through his posts to see how he really feels. It's scary because he has, he wants to introduce legislation to charge teachers with felonies for allowing students to read books that include characters or the authors discovering and exploring their identities and sexualities, based on Iowa Code 728, which is about obscenity. So I just linked to the code about this. It's scary because, here's this person that's elected and they're going after library books when they could be doing a lot of other things. So Brad Zahn is another guy who is definitely in lockstep with Jake Chapman. So it's important to know these things because they are trying to introduce laws to, basically jail our teachers and by extension, public librarians too. So just so you know, public libraries are exempted from Iowa's obscenity laws. So yay, he can't go after me for that. You could try other things. Okay, so what do we do about what may be coming our way? Stay informed, stay informed, stay informed. So I've linked this really cool tool. It's called the National Coalition Against Censorship. And it's a really neat website that you can explore. But what I love about it is they have a map with all of the challenges that have been going on since 2018. And you can see the impacted population. You can narrow it down to, okay, why aren't you letting me? Well, you can narrow this down to just look at the public libraries that have been challenged. Most of them are school libraries, but you can also see who is bringing the challenges, which I think is really interesting. And you can see their reasons why. Dark themes for The Giver. The Giver. A lot of it is LGBTQ stuff. They, they like to challenge that. So I encourage you to look at these and then see what actually happens in the resolving process. It seems like the public libraries have been lucky, at least the ones that are noted on here, because they've gone through their process and then ultimately the library board has decided to keep the books on the shelves. Which I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a lively discussion about it, but if you're on the library board, and you believe in the mission, you should want to have lots of different items for all types of patrons. I was just sent an intellectual freedom statement that the Teton County Library in Wyoming has. And they just kind of spell out what intellectual freedom is a little bit more thoroughly. I'm not saying that our library would need to do this, but it's something that, we can think about if we want to make our policy even more robust than it already is. So I linked to that because I just thought it was a nice way of, seeing that even though the content may be controversial, unorthodox, or unacceptable to some, the collection is for everybody. And, they do go on to say that the library does not stand in loco parentis, and that, you need to have those conversations with your child yourself. I think it's really important right now that we let our school board know that what our views on intellectual freedom and censorship are before there's a challenge that comes to them, so that they're aware that it always seems like the vocal minority has the loudest voice, and it can seem like that's the way that most people feel, because there's a large majority of people who are just, we just are here and we don't get exercised about a lot of things, and we're not going to make a stink about something one way or the other. And I think that maybe it's time for us to maybe be more vocal in how we feel, before a vocal minority starts to come into school board meetings or library board meetings. Because what is happening is these national groups are, putting out these talking points, and they're encouraging people to go to, your public meetings. They may not have a child in the school district. They may not even be from your area. They could be from Cedar Rapids or, Western Iowa, and they know that you're going to be talking about a specific item, and they come in and, raise all kinds of ruckus, shall we say, which has happened. I was talking about Urbandale just a couple of minutes ago, and, Jake Chapman, that's not even his district. He came specifically to watch the proceedings and encourage his supporters to, take issue with these books. And that was pointed out to him on his Facebook page, but he doesn't really care about that. So they will come from wherever if they can. So I think it's a good idea to let the school board know, like, hey, this is where I stand as a citizen and also as a library board member. So maybe they'll start thinking about where they stand. Contact your local state representatives, let them know how much you value the library and support intellectual freedom. You can do this really easily on February 8th. ILA is having the lobby from home. If you click on that link, it will take you to the Iowa Library Association page. They have talking points and make it really easy to talk to people that are representatives about issues. It's really nicely laid out. And encourage your friends to get involved as well. It does not take very much time. Doesn't take a lot of time to do this. And they also have a really nice form letter that you can copy and paste into an email that takes 3 minutes to do. So I encourage people to do that as well. And then also to read the Iowa Library Association's joint statement that they put out with the Iowa Association of School Libraries on book challenges across the state, which I've also linked, which they did at the end of November, because more and more of these challenges have started to pop up. And it's important for our school librarians to know that we have their back. So it's a really beautifully crafted letter that I know the Intellectual Freedom Committee worked hard on. And, so I encourage you all to be familiar with that. And then when a challenge occurs, and it will at some point, just to make sure that we stick to our procedures. And, I think a lot of times parents, especially, they just want to be heard. And so it's that, librarians, especially, we do the empathetic listening, and we hear their concerns and we understand what they're saying, and then try to have that conversation with them about library materials that they may find objectionable. If they keep pushing it, then we have a formal process. And I think most people are lazy and they don't necessarily want to go through the appeals process. And if you look at our collection or at our library policies at the end, we have a very nicely laid out challenge form, and it asks a lot of questions that hopefully are designed to make the patron think about what it is that they are really trying to do. And they may go through with that whole entire form and bring it to the board, and that's fine. It's when people just show up and they have not gone through the process of formally challenging that we can push back and say, thank you for your concern. I hear what you're saying. We have a procedure for this. So please, go to the library and fill out this form, and we would be happy to discuss it at our next meeting, and really stick to those talking points, because that's the only way that we have to move forward. And lastly, I just want you all to know that I really want Jenny to buy us this shirt for the entire library staff. I haven't told her yet, but that's what I want. I just ordered this. I'm picking it up on Wednesday. In case there's any confusion about where I stand on this issue. I will help people find whatever they want with no judgment. And I really want, part of our mission of being, inclusive and including everybody means including everybody. Honestly, the thing that I struggle with sometimes with collection development when I'm like helping Andrew with that is like exactly what kind of like Judeo-Christian materials to put in the collection, because there's a lot of fundamentalist texts that are out there for kids. And like, I don't think those are necessarily good books for the library. I did just recently, we got a book about like finding saints in a church. It's a picture book by Chris Rashka, and it was a game that he used to play with his mom. And so it talks about like the different saints that are in his childhood Catholic church. Like, I think that's great because it's informative, but it's not taking a stance. And so, that's where like, I think, if anything, that's something like, that's where my bias comes in, is like, oh, I don't want us to seem like we're too churchy, but also like having, those types of appropriate books for kids that do talk about religion in kind of a non-proselytizing way. So anyway, I would be happy to share the slides with you all, just so that you can have those links, so that you can find that information kind of at your fingertips if you so choose. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, if you would share the slides, that'd be really helpful.
If you just send them to me, I can drop them into the Dropbox
Okay.
with the rest of today's packet.
Okay, I will do that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Erin.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay.
Anybody
Now,
questions for Erin? I don't, everyone's sort of looking, but no.
okay, if I leave the meeting, it's not going to delete you guys because I'm no longer sharing.
Correct. You should
Okay.
be.
Okay, blame Nick.
We will.
Okay.
All right,
Shall we move along then?
please.
All right. Well, next up are reports. So I guess that's actually on Jenny.
It is on me. So the budget report is here. I'm gonna just scroll down to my report since it's all in there. We're at 74% with the maintenance and utilities, same song and dance as every month. 44% with contractual services, and commodities is at 56%. Our average this time of year would be 50%, except for those upfront payments that we do quite regularly that fall in commodities and under the maintenance line with our software updates and things like that. So we are pretty much on track for where we should be. Does anyone have questions about the financial report? All right, so shall I move on? All right, so we just finished evaluations. Jennifer and I worked on those. They're due at the end of the month, so we're feeling really actually good that they're done before the end of the month. That's really great. And all the staff who have someone that they supervise have finished theirs. So I think we are completely done with them at this point. We're pretty excited. And then our JEDI committee, which is our Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, just launched this month. The members are listed in my report, but it's Amy, Andrew, Dara, who's one of our part-time staff who was really wanting to be involved, Emily, Kelly, and Melanie. They drafted a values statement this month. So I don't know if I included that in the packet, but I will. If I didn't drop it in there, I meant to. And then they also are talking about what staff-driven activities they might want to do and whether they decide they want to keep the name JEDI committee or come up with something different. So we'll see what they come up with. That was sort of our on-the-fly name that we had for it. We're pretty excited about that committee's mission and what they're doing going forth. and they'll be reporting to us once they have more to offer. They've only met once so far. So, and then we are continuing on strategic planning. As you guys know, you got a note from me asking for names. I have filled out almost all those names. I think I have one or two more. I was waiting to hear from a couple people that I gave until today. So we will have 15 interviews that Becky will do. She'll call folks and do about a 15-20 minute interview with each one, depending on how much those folks like to talk. And those will be scheduled for the end of the month. So just another week from now, or the end of this week, next week. So I really have to get rolling on those last couple that I want to get in there, but I have the rest of them already mostly all scheduled. So we're doing pretty well with that. And then we'll step through the process, which after that she has that done, we'll have a meeting with all of the staff and start working through more of what we want to do based on what her findings say. And then Erin is going to loop some kids in too. We're going to find a way to get kids involved in this. They typically do Becky's planning has included kids and adults, and it's hard to get kids to come. So I suggested perhaps a separate thing for kids. And Erin has some circles training, so I think she's going to use her circles training to do some cool stuff with the kids in the next month or so. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about masking in the building. We are still requiring masks, and the library has really not had any issues to speak of. We've had a few people with questions, but nothing too big. But we did have an incident about a week ago where 2 staff actually asked a person to mask up, and she just didn't only not mask up, but she just refused to acknowledge that they were even asking her, that she just kept speaking over them and not putting on her mask and holding her baby at the desk. So we did ask her to step outside and that we would serve her from outside. We were able to, she wanted documents printed. We printed them. I handed them to her. She left. They did end up calling me to the front just because it got a little bit tense. I think there was a little tension. We have not had that, so I don't think it's a big deal, but just proactively, we did come up with sort of I just asked Kelly to come up with a script, but she made this fantastic flow chart. And I thought it was worth showing you guys. So I did drop it into the Dropbox just right before the meeting, because that just actually happened today. But basically it's a 2-time request for compliance to wear the masks. The first time is what we always do, is just, hi, how are you doing today? Did you need a mask? We have some if you don't have one. And then if the second time they've been asked to put on a mask, they don't comply, then the third time is asking them to step outside of that. We'd be happy to serve them through curbside, but that we're unable to assist them otherwise if they can't comply with the mask rule. At this point, that is a conduct issue. It is not anything to do with masking or not masking. It's just, that is our policy and it's a rule. So it's just like any conduct issue, we're going to ask you to leave. And basically I've told the staff, you are just welcome to say, I am unable to serve you unless you can wear a mask. And then if they are not willing, then we just ask them to step out. We'll still provide the service, just need to have you in a safe environment so that we aren't putting staff at risk, which is what I keep telling the kids in the teen lounge when they take off their masks. If you want the library to be open, I need you to wear your masks so that we don't get staff sick, because if we get sick, we're going down. So we are otherwise doing well. The rec center has some meetings or some leagues on the weekends that have been a little bit of a struggle, but the library staff just was talking with me about it today, and it seems like things have been going better than they have. A couple of weekends it was a little bit of a struggle, and we actually I just told the staff to shut the doors and people could just go around if they weren't wearing their masks or weren't willing to mask up, but it seems like that's mostly better now. So then just community update. We are doing comprehensive planning for the city right now. And we had the opportunity last week to meet with RDG consultants who are doing the comprehensive plan. It was a really interesting meeting, just about an hour and a half long with us on Zoom, just talking about what with our views and visions for the city overall and things we'd like to see. So that's really exciting. And I would just wanted to encourage you guys that there will be chances for people in the public to get involved and give input. And all that information is really readily available on the city's website. So if you're interested, I would highly encourage you following that and getting the updates from the city if you don't, because then you'll find out about them.
I
Then
participated.
What's
I
that?
went to that meeting last Wednesday. They had one for
Oh, great.
the community, so I went. It was interesting.
Wonderful. I'm glad you were there. And then just our practicum student, Amy Blessing, compiled a survey that she had for older residents in the community, and just gave some really interesting and good information for us. And Amy Golly on our library staff will be working on, some of the things she found to respond to some of those things as far as like what we can do with programming that they're asking for, looking for, and what we need to do to give people information that they might not already have. Or that they don't know that the library already offers, which is always the case. There's always a couple people that say they want something that we already do. And then we just need to figure out how come they don't know. So finding those things out, it'll help us continue to market our services. And so I did include that also in the board packet for you guys to see. And then just professional activities. I'm super excited Wednesday this week to be involved in a national panel discussion with a group called Realm, which is reopening archives, libraries, and museums. It's part of the OCLC project and the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and a group called Battelle, that they're just producing and distributing information based on science about COVID-19. I've been involved. I did an interview with them for a video that they had on just basic response to COVID and what we did in our library and moving forward from COVID. So this is sort of the next step. They invited us to participate. It's really interesting. My friend Kathy from Ohio is on it too, and she said, "I'm so glad you'll be there," because most of the other people on it are from gigantic library systems and much larger universities, big universities and things. So we'll be the small pups there, but which I think is great. I'm super excited that we get to represent our smaller libraries. And then they talked about what they'll do is they're going to create a toolkit that's like a public health crisis management toolkit for libraries. Will come out of these discussions and these forums. And then I was also invited by the Institute of Museums and Libraries to go to DC, Washington, DC on March 1st and 2nd. And I just got my formal invitation today. I had to fill out some forms. And so I will be on a panel that is happening on March 2nd regarding literacy in libraries, but more on the community responsiveness side of things in libraries. So I'm very excited about that. We're doing lots of fun stuff. Libraries as Bridges is another one. I had given you guys some information about that last month. Shemichael Hallman is a great leader from Memphis Libraries, and he is heading up that project. And I did have his TED talk that he had done on libraries as bridges and just the civic commons of libraries. So we are continuing that work. And then I linked to a podcast that I just did. So we've been busy, and the podcast is really fun. I got a shout out from Innovative, which is the business company that has our software that we use here at the library, Polaris from California, on Twitter. So that's my first Twitter shout out. So it's been a lot of fun doing these things. And then we've been presenting. We presented a couple of times this month for the Iowa Library Association or Iowa Library State Libraries, and for Kansas Libraries System asked us to come present. So that was Kelly and Emily and I, and that's all on these same topics of policies of yes and equity and inclusion in libraries. And finally, working on the Libraries and Resilient Communities grant, which is a grant from the University of Iowa. The project's kind of starting to come together. We're very excited as part of that LARC initiative. Our 5 libraries in Johnson County, and then Blairstown, I believe, is involved too, are going to host some social work grad students doing some community assessments, and then some work in the library to help train staff and doing some other things with social work. So we're pretty excited, and there is some funding available that could come to help us either pay for some of that social work practicum things, or in some other way for us to program, and we're pretty excited about that. And that is all I have tonight. And then, of course, our staff reports are below, if anyone has questions on any of those.
Lots
No.
of head shaking. All right, thank you, Jen. And I guess, hold on, gotta get back to my agenda. Okay, so now we have to move on to policy review, and we have both service policy and child and vulnerable adult safety policy.
So on the service policy, I'll point out I did add a comment about removing in item 4 registration, just about asking people for addresses. We typically ask them for an address, and we used to always require an ID. As we know in North Liberty, a lot of folks just don't have their current address on their ID. And the majority of people who come in our library are not planning to come in and give us a fake address and pilfer a bunch of library materials. So we do this, like to call it radical trust. It's one of my favorite phrases. So we'd like to just strike that from the thing altogether. We'll still kind of procedurally ask them for an ID. The reason we do it is more for our own benefit, to make sure we get the information correct if they have one, and potentially still send out those postcards on occasion if somebody, sometimes people aren't even sure of their own address. So then we might say, hey, let's just try this and see if you get it, and then we'll know that the address is correct. Especially with our kiddos and things coming in, or somebody new. And sometimes people will just automatically bring in a piece of mail because they know we're going to ask. We don't typically, but if they have it, that's great. And then changing the language, which is the start of this work toward this equity, from she or he to they throughout. And you'll see as well, and I haven't fixed it in this one, but where it says parent or guardian, what I did what we did after talking about it in the service or child safety policy is to just change the wording to guardians or caregivers, or guardians and caregivers. So, I think that's just an important thing. We don't always know if it's a parent or if it's a grandparent or who's looking after kids. So we are going to try to change that wording throughout. I just missed it, and so I'll go back through if that's okay. And if it's, I identify where that is in the policy and make those changes if I see. I know there's the one at least, but I don't know if there's more than that. So I'll take a run through and find that. Otherwise, I think most of the changes in the policy are, we don't take pictures anymore. We used to take them for identification purposes, but people change so fast and things. It's just sort of an extra step that we don't feel like we need. We rarely look at them. And then just shifting, talking about being able to, that they can check out without their card, things like that. Anytime we can find a place to remove a barrier of any way, that's what we're looking to do in these policies, but still protect ourselves in those. So, and I don't think there's anything else that's really glaring. Just basically making sure that we're doing in the policies what we're doing here in the library. And then in the child safety policy, it looks like a lot, but it's mainly just changing the verbiage to match that same thing, guardian, caregiver, throughout the policy. And then just kind of friendlier language, rather than saying police, we're saying social services or law enforcement, and things like that. So it looks really busy, but I decided not to add the other one in because it's really just those minor changes throughout.
Does anyone have any questions about the service policy? We'll start with that one. No. Okay, is everyone okay with the language changes that have been made in the verbiage? Right, so does anyone want to move to approve it?
I move
a
to
motion.
approve it.
I'll second it.
All right, thanks, Mike and Heidi. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, the same. All right, the service policy has been approved. And next we'll go on to the child and vulnerable adult safety policy. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to approve it with the changes? And Jenny will go back and make any additional changes if there's still those same verbiage changes that need to be made.
I'll make a motion to approve the library child safety and vulnerable adults policy.
A second.
I'll second.
Right. All right, all those in favor of approving that policy, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. All right, well then, motion is approved for the child and vulnerable adult safety policy. And I did not have any old business. Did I miss anything though?
Just the personnel statement, policy statement that I have to have you guys approve.
Yes,
for
that's
the-
new business though.
Oh, yeah,
Way
sorry.
to jump ahead, Jenny.
I'm sorry.
All right, but yes, we have the personnel policy statement, which is coming from the city, if I'm understanding correctly, right?
Yeah, we just follow the city's policy, but the state accreditation for the libraries, State Library of Iowa requires that we have a piece of paper in the policy manual or a
Okay.
policy that says that we follow their policy.
All right, and so we have to
And
vote
every
to
3 years, we have to approve it.
Okay, well, does anyone have questions on that or why we have to do that or anything? No?
I'll have
Okay.
more for you guys on accreditation next, or in March. I'm working my way through that lovely, fun process right now.
All right, would anyone like to move past that personnel policy statement?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
You, anyone like to second?
I'll second that.
You, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Oh, no. All right, well then, that motion is approved to add that paper to the policy. And remember, next month, we do not have a meeting. We tend to skip February. So right now, our next meeting is scheduled for March 21st. Unless anyone knows of a holiday or some other reason we cannot have it then. Okay, I haven't missed anything this time, thank you. All right, well, is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up this month before we adjourn until March?
Hope to stay warm.
Yes,
My
school is
son's very
canceled
excited.
tomorrow.
I
Parents
know. My son is like, yay.
got all
Is
the
it canceled
notifications.
already?
Yeah.
Yes, I got like all the notifications while we were on here, so I'm like
Yes.
frantically trying to push the button to stop Matt Degner from talking to me.
Oh, my goodness.
So I apologize for that portion of the evening, but yes, stay safe and warm. And would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn our January meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, well then we are adjourned for this month and we'll talk again in March, and good luck with all your upcoming events, Jenny.
Thank you.